Hey, it's Brett, and this is Brett and Some Books. Today we are continuing the plot to seize the White House by Jules Archer, and we are on Chapter 5 of Part 3. To carry his warnings further to the American people, Butler began touring the country in a series of lectures. On the podium, he held audiences fascinated not only by his vigorous exposés of big business, war makers, the American Liberty League, and the American Legion royal family, but by sheer dynamism of his personality. As he grew more and more heated, he would roam the stage, gesticulating vigorously as he made his points, often extemporaneously, in salty, sometimes ribald, always blunt language. He was flooded with requests for appearances at huge veteran bonus rallies staged by the VFW all over the country. In his speeches to veterans, he would growl at their naivety as dumb soldiers because they didn't organize politically to fight for veterans' benefits due them. They would grin and applaud enthusiastically, knowing that behind his gruff manner was a genuine fondness and concern for their welfare. Acknowledged as the spokesman for the forgotten veteran, he was besieged with requests for help getting adequate pensions for disabled veterans, although through the VFW put pressure on the Veterans Administration in hundreds of cases. The worshipful attitude of veterans toward Butler was expressed in a typical letter to him, March 1935, by a veteran who wrote, "We all know what you speak our language, and that the vet is about as close as your heart as anything else in the world." There was no generation gap between the 54-year-old general and the youth leaders of that period, who were organizing the American Student Union to fight against war and fascism. They felt a close kinship with the war hero who hated wars and hated the men who had sent him to fight them. Now, constantly proselytizing against war in the hope of stopping any new ones, Butler also wrote magazine articles condemning Marine intervention in the affairs of China. Speaking at a YMCA in Coatesville, Pennsylvania, in February, he accused the big industrialists of America of fattening on the blood of soldiers. He pointed out that the average profit of the DuPonts from 1910 to 1914 had been only $6 million, but had soared to $58 million between 1914 and 1918. The jump in the same periods for Bethlehem steel had been from $6 million to $49 million, for International Nickel, $4 million to $73 million. "It makes you feel proud," he said bitingly. "A lot of the stockholders are members of the National Economy League. And after I complete my investigation, I will probably find they are also members of the American Liberty League." On February 25th, Time magazine ran a 2-column photo showing Butler and comedian Jimmy Durante, who attended a dinner in Pittsburgh where the general is speaking, facing each other nose to nose in a light moment for the photographer. The caption read, "Schnozzle Gimlet Eye, Fascist to Fascist?" In a tiny footnote at the bottom of the page, in 5-point type that could barely be read, Time informed those of its readers with 20/20 vision. Also, last week, the House Committee on Un-American Activities purported to report that a 2-month investigation had convinced it that General Butler's story of a fascist march on Washington was alarmingly true. This was Time's microscopic amends for its lengthy page 1 ridicule of the plot a dozen weeks earlier. In March 1935, Butler began lecturing to mass meetings called by the VFW, speaking on behalf of the Patman bonus bill. He lost no opportunity to warn veterans also against those big business interests who favored war and fascism. His convictions were strengthened by a new book based on the Nye munitions investigation, The Road to War, by Walter Millis. He wrote a small anti-war book of his own that year, and based on an earlier magazine article in which he favored a foreign policy of strict neutrality in War is a Racket, he advocated an ironclad defense a rat couldn't crawl through, but only to defend the United States against attack. The job of the armed forces, he insisted, was only to protect democracy at home, not waste lives on foreign soil to protect American investments overseas. War is conducted for the benefit of the very few at the expense of the masses. Out of war, a few people make huge fortunes. How many of these war millionaires shouldered a rifle? Newly acquired territory promptly is exploited by the same few who want to wring dollars out of the blood in the war. The general public shoulders the bill. Newly placed gravestones, mangled bodies, shattered minds, broken hearts and homes, economic instability, depression and all its attendant miseries, back-breaking taxation for generations and generations. For a great many years, as a soldier, I had a suspicion that war was a racket, and not until I retired to civil life did I fully realize it. Now that I see the international war clouds again gathering, as they are today, I must face it and speak out. There are 40 million men under arms in the world today, and our statesmen and diplomats have the temerity to say that war is not in the making. Hell's bells! Are these 40 million men being trained to be dancers? Mussolini is ready for war. Hitler is an equal, if not greater, menace to peace. The mad dogs of Europe are on the loose. Yes, they, munitions makers, bankers, shipbuilders, manufacturers, meat packers, speculators, are getting ready for another war. Why shouldn't they? It pays high dividends, but what does it profit the masses? Who are killed? American boys in past wars were made to regard murder as the order of the day. We used them a couple of years and trained them to think nothing at all of killing or being killed. Then suddenly we discharged them and told them to do their own readjusting. Many, too many, of those fine young boys were eventually destroyed mentally. The soldiers couldn't bargain for their labor. By developing the metal business, the government learned it could get soldiers for less money. We gave them the large salary of $30 a month. All they had to do for that munificent sum was to leave their dear ones behind, give up their jobs, lay in swampy trenches, eat canned willy when they could get it, and kill and kill and kill and be killed. But there is a way to stop it. You can't end it by disarmament conferences, by resolutions. It can be smashed effectively only by taking the profit out of war. The only way to smash this racket is to conscript capital and industry and labor before the nation's manhood can be conscripted. Let the officers and directors and high-powered executives of our armament factories and steel companies and our munitions makers and our shipbuilders and our airplane builders, as well as the bankers and the speculators, be conscripted to get $30 a month, the same wage as the lads in the trenches get. Let the workers in these plants get the same wages. Yes, and all the generals and all admirals and all officers and all politicians. Why shouldn't they? They aren't running any risk of being killed or having their bodies mangled or their minds shattered. Give capital and industry and labor 30 days to think it over, and you will find, by that time, there will be no war. That will smash the war racket. That and nothing else. Industrialists and financiers were shocked by Butler's radical notion. but they had checked the Oxford Dictionary. If they had checked it, they would have found as one definition of conscription, taxation or confiscation of property for war purposes to impose equality of sacrifice on non-conscripts.